To our amazing viewers at Echo Tales, we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect of Empires. Julian Thorne stood before the towering expanse of glass in his corner office, the Seattle skyline a shimmering tapestry beneath a gentle afternoon rain. At 42, his presence alone commanded a grudging respect, often tinged with a quiet fear. His eyes, the color of polished steel, had overseen countless battles in the corporate arena, where he crushed competitors with an almost surgical precision. Julian Thorne didn't merely succeed, he obliterated. "Sir, your wife called about dinner," his assistant's voice announced through the intercom, a polite interruption to his silent dominion. Julian's jaw tightened, an almost imperceptible clenching. Eleanor, his wife of 16 years, mother to their 14-year-old daughter, Sophia. The woman who once looked at him with an adoration that bordered on reverence, now seemed distant, their shared life reduced to scheduled meals and formal pleasantries. He had forged Thorne Enterprises from nothing, a crucible of ambition ignited when his father abandoned their family when Julian was just 12. While other children lost themselves in games, Julian delved into studies, devoured work, and meticulously charted his future. By 25, he commanded 3 flourishing tech startups. By 30, his net worth soared to $50 million. By 35, he had married Eleanor Vale, a stunning brunette from a modest background, seemingly captivated by his meteoric rise. The early years had been good, even vibrant. Eleanor had been his steadfast support, a quiet anchor against the relentless tide of his 18-hour workdays and singular pursuit of wealth. Sophia had arrived, a beacon of blonde innocence. They had acquired the sprawling mansion in Bellevue, living a gilded version of the American dream. But success, Julian mused, often bred complacency, and complacency, in turn, became a fertile ground for betrayal. His phone vibrated, a text from Gareth Vance, his charismatic business partner. "Emergency meeting tomorrow. Henderson contract requires immediate attention." Gareth, 6 feet of easy charm, a smile that disarmed women and earned men's trust effortlessly. Julian had encountered him 5 years prior, a struggling consultant in desperate need of a lifeline. Julian, ever the visionary, had seen the raw potential, brought Gareth in as a partner, granting him 40% of the burgeoning enterprise. That evening, Julian returned home to find Eleanor in the kitchen, a black dress clinging to her curves, too perfectly for a quiet dinner at home. "You look beautiful," he said, his kiss a light, almost clinical touch on her cheek. She tensed, a faint ripple beneath his lips. "Thank you. How was your day?" Her forced cheerfulness grated against his nerves like sand on glass. "Productive." He paused, a predator sensing a shift in the air. "Gareth mentioned an issue with Henderson. Are you familiar with that client?" A flicker, a ghost of something unreadable, crossed her eyes. "No, should I be? Just curious. You seem to know more about my business lately than you used to." Sophia bounded into the kitchen, her blonde hair, so like her mother's, bouncing with youthful energy. "Dad, can I sleep over at Chloe Davies' house this weekend?" Chloe Davies. Her father's a police officer. She's new at school. Really nice. Julian studied his daughter's eager face. At 14, Sophia was still innocent, still believed in the unbreakable bond of her parents' love, still saw the world as inherently fair and just. "We'll see," he murmured, ruffling her hair. During dinner, Julian's gaze meticulously tracked Eleanor. She checked her phone 3 times, each attempt to conceal it clumsy and obvious. When she excused herself for the bathroom, her purse and phone vanished with her. Later, after Sophia was tucked into bed, Julian sat in his study, a glass of 20-year-old Macallan amber in his hand. He had built an empire on the unshakable principle that information was power. He knew the financial pulse of every competitor, the hidden weaknesses of every rival. Yet, he realized with a chilling clarity, he had been utterly blind in his own home. The following morning, Julian placed a call to his younger brother, Liam Thorne, a private investigator based in Portland. Their contact had been sparse in recent months, strained by Liam's criticisms of Julian's relentless ambition eclipsing his family. "I need you to look into something," Julian stated without preamble. Always straight to business with you, Liam replied, a familiar weariness in his tone. What is it? My wife. Discreetly. And Gareth Vance. A heavy silence stretched between them. Julian, are you sure you want to go down this road? Just do it. Chapter 2. The Threads Unravel. 3 days later, Liam Thorne sat opposite his brother in Julian's study, a manila folder resting between them like a loaded weapon. You're not going to like this, Liam said, his voice heavy with a profound regret. Julian's expression remained a mask of impassive resolve as he opened the folder. Photos spilled out. Eleanor and Gareth at a luxury hotel, sharing a kiss in Gareth's car, entering an apartment Julian didn't recognize. The timestamps revealed a betrayal that had festered for 8 agonizing months. There's more, Liam added quietly. They've been planning something. I followed Gareth to a meeting with a man named Silas Croft. He has connections to people who can forge new identities, false documents. Julian's fingers drummed against his polished desk, the sole visible tremor of the inferno raging within. Go on. I believe they're planning to disappear together. Gareth has been systematically liquidating assets, converting them into untraceable cryptocurrency. And Eleanor? Liam hesitated. She's been photographing documents from your home office. Which documents? Your insurance policies, business contracts, offshore accounts, everything worth stealing. Julian rose, walking to his wall-mounted safe, and pulling out several files. He had noticed their subtle displacement, a shift so minute most would overlook it. But Julian Thorne noticed everything. How much does Gareth have access to through his partnership share? And what Eleanor's feeding him? Potentially everything. Your entire fortune. Julian's laugh was a cold, hollow sound, devoid of humor. And my wife thinks she can betray me, walk away rich with my business partner. No less. Julian, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, Julian said, pouring himself another drink, his gaze fixed on the shimmering amber liquid, that they've made a fatal error in judgment. They believe I'm merely another successful businessman they can manipulate and rob. Liam shifted uncomfortably. You could divorce her, cut Gareth out of the business. No. Julian's voice sliced through the air like a sharpened blade. They've declared war on me. And in war, the only acceptable outcome is total victory. Over the following week, Julian meticulously maintained his normal routine while silently amassing intelligence. He installed hidden cameras throughout his mansion, hired a tech expert to monitor Eleanor's phone and computer, and ensured Gareth was shadowed around the clock. The picture that emerged was far more sinister than he had initially conceived. Not only were they planning to rob him blind, but they had also recruited assistants. Arthur Finch, Julian's accountant of 6 years, was complicit, helping Gareth conceal assets and prepare for their escape. The plan was chilling in its elegant simplicity. Eleanor would stage her own death in a car accident. The insurance payout would be colossal, and with Julian shattered by grief, Gareth would gradually transfer the business assets offshore. By the time anyone realized the deception, the trio would be living lavishly in a non-extradition country. But they had gravely underestimated Julian Thorne. They saw a successful businessman, perhaps softened by age and wealth. They failed to see the 12-year-old boy who had sworn that no one would ever abandon or betray him again. Julian's plan began to coalesce, not merely to thwart them, but to utterly obliterate them, making their betrayal a permanent, brutal lesson to anyone else who might ever dare to cross him. Chapter 3. The Trap is Set. Julian's first decisive move was to contact Serafina Dale, a former military police officer now working as a private security consultant. Small, blonde, and deceptively innocent, she was the perfect instrument for his design. I need someone who can play dead convincingly, he told her during their clandestine meeting at a downtown cafe. Serafina raised an eyebrow, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. That's an unusual request, Mr. Thorne. I'm willing to pay you $50,000 for 1 day's work. I'm listening. Julian explained a carefully edited version of the unfolding drama. His wife was orchestrating a fake death to steal his fortune, and he intended to turn the tables on her. So, you want me to pretend to be your wife's body? Exactly. You'll play the victim of a car accident. A medical examiner, who owes me a significant favor, will declare you deceased. Meanwhile, My wife will be safely secured elsewhere, very much alive, watching her perfect plan crumble. Serafina studied him, her gaze piercing. And then what? Then, Julian said, a cold edge to his voice, she faces the full consequences of her choices. The next phase demanded Julian manipulate his own formidable security system. He had the mansion's surveillance equipment meticulously modified, allowing him precise control over what was recorded and when. He also commissioned the construction of a secret, soundproof, climate-controlled vault deep in the basement, comfortable enough for an extended, involuntary stay. Gareth, fueled by his own greed, played directly into Julian's hands, suggesting they accelerate their timeline when he learned Julian planned to review all business partnerships at the end of the month. The car accident is set for this Friday, Gareth told Eleanor during a phone call Julian was monitoring. Silas has everything arranged. You crash the car. I create the scene. You slip away. By the time anyone figures out the body isn't yours, we'll be long gone. But Julian had already intercepted Silas Croft, offering him double what Gareth was paying to switch allegiances. Now, Silas worked for Julian, poised to execute a very different plan. Friday morning dawned gray and rainy. Eleanor kissed Julian goodbye, her lips feeling like ice against his cheek. I'll see you tonight, she said, her last lie. Julian spent the day meticulously setting the final pieces in place. He had Arthur Finch's office thoroughly searched, unearthing irrefutable evidence of the embezzlement that would send the accountant to prison. Garrett's apartment was thoroughly bugged, his communications relentlessly monitored. At 4 p.m., Julian received the call he had anticipated. It's done, Silas said, his voice flat. Your wife's car is wrapped around a tree on Highway 18. But don't worry, she never touched the steering wheel. Instead, Eleanor Thorne lay unconscious in the back of Silas's van, drugged during what she believed was a final meeting to coordinate their escape. She would awaken in Julian's basement, very much alive, but utterly at his mercy. Meanwhile, Serafina Dale lay amidst the twisted wreckage of Eleanor's car, her body positioned to obscure her face, awaiting the arrival of the police to declare Eleanor Thorne deceased. Julian Thorne smiled, then carefully composed his most grief-stricken expression and headed home, ready to embody the devastated widower. The real performance was about to begin. Chapter 4. The performance begins. Julian was in the kitchen, meticulously setting the table for their anniversary dinner when a knock reverberated through the house. He had been preparing for this moment for weeks, rehearsing every reaction, perfecting every nuance of his performance. Detective Miller stood at the door, his uniform crisp despite the relentless rain. Behind him, a younger officer with sympathetic eyes waited by their patrol car. Mr. Thorne, I'm Detective Miller with the Bellevue Police Department. Julian's face immediately contorted with concern. Is everything all right, officer? Sir, I'm afraid I have some very difficult news. Your wife was in a fatal car accident an hour ago. Julian's carefully crafted expression of profound shock and disbelief would have garnered him an Academy Award. His face went pale, his hand gripping the doorframe with theatrical desperation. His voice cracked perfectly when he spoke. No, that's impossible. She's upstairs, asleep. She had a headache and went to lie down. Detective Miller exchanged a glance with his partner. Sir, I understand this is difficult to process, but we found her vehicle wrapped around a tree on Highway 18. The medical examiner has confirmed. No. Julian's voice carried just the right note of desperate denial, bordering on hysteria. She's here. She's upstairs in our bedroom. I'll show you. He led the officers through his opulent home, his steps urgent, desperate, a man clinging to hope against impossible odds. The performance was flawless. Eleanor, he called out as they ascended the grand staircase. Eleanor, wake up. There are police officers here with some terrible mistake about you being in an accident. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar. Julian pushed it open, gesturing for the officers to precede him. On the sprawling bed, beneath the luxurious covers, was a feminine form. Blonde hair, so much like Eleanor's, was spread across the pillow, her face turned away from the door. See? Julian's voice was thick with relief and vindication. She's right here. She's just sleeping. But as they approached the bed, Detective Miller's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. He had witnessed enough scenes to recognize a chilling anomaly. "Sir," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "step away from her." "That isn't." The figure on the bed wasn't breathing. It wasn't moving at all. Detective Miller drew his weapon, his partner following suit. "Sir, step back now." Julian's expression shifted from relief to confusion, then to dawning horror. Another perfect transition. "What's wrong? What are you doing?" Jackson approached the bed cautiously, his gun trained on the motionless figure. He reached out to check for a pulse. His hand met cold, waxy skin. It was a mannequin, a life-sized, incredibly realistic mannequin, meticulously dressed in Eleanor's clothes, adorned with her jewelry, and a blonde wig styled precisely like her hair. "Mr. Thorne," Miller said, his voice now official and utterly devoid of sympathy, "I need you to put your hands where I can see them and tell me where your wife really is." Julian's performance shifted once more. Now, he was a confused, grieving husband, utterly bewildered by the unfolding nightmare. "I don't understand. She was here when I went downstairs. She was sleeping right here." "Sir, this is a mannequin. Where is your wife?" I don't know. She was here. Someone must have. Someone took her." His voice rose with a panic that seemed entirely genuine. In the subterranean vault, 30 feet below where they stood, Eleanor Thorne was stirring, her consciousness returning in Julian's specially prepared prison. The walls were soundproof, the door a steel monolith, and there was no escape save through Julian himself. She would awaken to find herself in a comfortable but inescapable cell, a monitor on the wall showing her precisely what was unfolding upstairs, watching her husband give the performance of a lifetime, while her lover and co-conspirators awaited news of her death. The trap was sprung, and now the real game could begin. Chapter 5: The Awakening. Eleanor's consciousness returned slowly, an agonizing swim up through dark, viscous water. Her head throbbed, her mouth was parched, and her memory of how she arrived here was a terrifying blank. As her vision sharpened, she found herself lying on a luxurious bed in a room she'd never seen. The walls were a soothing cream, the floor carpeted, a small, elegant bathroom visible through an open door, and even a compact kitchenette with a mini fridge. It was almost a luxury hotel suite, save for two critical details. There were no windows, and the door was unequivocally reinforced steel. A large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall flickered to life, displaying her husband's face. But not Julian as she knew him. This Julian looked ravaged, desperate, pleading with police officers. She was here. His voice, though muffled through the speakers, carried the same frantic energy. Someone must have taken her. Eleanor's blood turned to ice as the horrific reality of what she was witnessing slammed into her. This was live footage from their bedroom, where a mannequin, dressed in her clothes, lay motionless on their bed. A second camera angle showed Detective Miller interrogating Julian in their living room. "Mr. Thorne, your wife's car was found in a fatal accident. The body at the scene has been identified as Eleanor Thorne, but now you're claiming she was kidnapped from your bedroom." "I know how it sounds," Julian said, his voice breaking with chilling conviction, "but I'm telling you the truth. She was sleeping upstairs when you arrived." Eleanor's hands began to tremble, the full, crushing scope of what had transpired hitting her like a physical blow. The car accident, the staged death, Gareth waiting for her to escape. None of it had gone according to plan. Julian knew. Julian had known all along. An intercom crackled to life in her room. "Hello, darling." Julian's voice, calm and controlled, utterly unlike the desperate man on the screen, filled the air. "I trust you're feeling better. You were unconscious for quite a while." "Julian," she whispered, then louder, a surge of adrenaline propelling her voice. "Julian, what have you done? I've given you exactly what you wanted, Eleanor. You wanted to disappear, to leave your old life behind. Consider this your fresh start. Let me out of here." "I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, according to the world, Eleanor Thorne died in a car accident this afternoon. There's even a body to prove it. Well, close enough for the initial investigation." On the screen, she watched Garrett's luxury car pull into their driveway. He emerged, his face a mask of concern and grief, ready to play the supportive business partner, consoling his friend's profound loss. "Gareth's here," Julian continued through the intercom, his tone laced with dark amusement. He's come to comfort me in my time of grief. Isn't that touching? The same man who's been sleeping with my wife has come to offer his condolences. Eleanor watched in horror as Gareth embraced Julian at the front door, both men performing their roles with chilling perfection. Gareth had no idea that his lover was very much alive and watching from her underground prison. "You're insane," Eleanor gasped. "I'm thorough," Julian corrected. "Did you truly think you could steal 16 years of my life, rob me blind, and just walk away? Did you think I'd never uncover the offshore accounts, the false identities, the insurance fraud?" Gareth was now in their living room, speaking with the police officers. "Julian, I can't believe this happened. If there's anything I can do—" "He doesn't know, does he?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. Julian's voice held a chilling amusement. "Gareth still thinks you're dead. Still thinks his plan worked perfectly. He's probably wondering why he hasn't heard from you yet, but he'll assume you're being cautious, waiting for the heat to die down. This is kidnapping, murder. They'll figure it out, will they? The police have a body, a car accident, a grieving husband who clearly had nothing to do with it, since he was home preparing dinner. Gareth will provide my alibi. He spoke to me an hour before the accident, can confirm I was home cooking. The camera showed Liam Thorne arriving at the house, Julian's brother, there to provide family support during the tragedy. Eleanor had always liked Liam, thought he was the more reasonable of the two brothers. Even Liam's playing his part, Julian said, as if reading her thoughts. He's quite the actor when properly motivated. Liam understands family loyalty, something you never learned. Over the next 2 hours, Eleanor watched a parade of mourners arrive, neighbors, business associates, even Sophia's friends' parents. Everyone believed Eleanor Thorne was dead, and they all bore witness to Julian's grief-stricken performance. Sophia herself was conveniently at her friend Chloe's house, being told the devastating news by phone. "Our daughter," Eleanor said, a raw plea in her voice. "You're letting her think I'm dead. Our daughter will be fine. Better than fine. She'll inherit everything that would have been yours, plus the insurance money. She'll be very wealthy, and she'll never know her mother was a cheating thief." "Julian, please." "The real question," Julian interrupted, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, "is what happens to you now. You want a new identity, a fresh start. I'm prepared to give you that, but it won't be the comfortable retirement in Costa Rica you were planning with Gareth." On the screen, Gareth was saying goodbye to Julian, promising to help with funeral arrangements, to be there for whatever Julian needed. The concern in his eyes looked almost genuine. "He's good," Julian mused. "I'll give him that. If I didn't know better, I'd almost believe he actually cared about you." As the police and visitors finally departed, Eleanor watched Julian close the front door and slump against it, shedding his mask of grief for the first time all day. The smile that spread across his face was cold and predatory. He looked directly into the camera, as if staring right into her soul. "Phase 1 complete," he said, his voice a chilling pronouncement. "Now the real fun begins." Chapter 6, The Web Titans. 3 chilling days after Eleanor's supposed demise, Gareth Vance sat in his downtown Seattle office, staring at his encrypted phone. No messages from Eleanor. No confirmation that she'd reached the safe house Silas Croft had arranged. Nothing. According to their plan, she should have contacted him by now, using their predetermined code. Her silence, a heavy weight, was beginning to gnaw at him. A soft knock on his door interrupted his frantic thoughts. Julian stood in the doorway, looking haggard and hollow-eyed, the picture of a grieving widower. "Julian," Gareth exclaimed, standing quickly. "You shouldn't be here. You should be home, resting." "I can't just sit in that house," Julian replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything reminds me of her. I need to work. Need something to occupy my mind." Gareth nodded sympathetically, even as he mentally calculated how this could subtly work to his advantage. A distracted, grieving Julian would be an easier man to manipulate. "Of course, whatever you need." What Gareth didn't know was that Julian had been meticulously monitoring his communications for weeks. Every encrypted message, every phone call, every clandestine meeting with his co-conspirators, Julian had seen it all. In her underground prison, Eleanor watched the interaction on her monitor, seeing Gareth's false concern for the husband of the woman he claimed to love. She'd been watching for 3 days now, seeing how effortlessly he slipped into his role as the supportive friend. Quite the performance. Julian's voice came through her intercom. I'm almost impressed by his acting ability. Almost. He doesn't know where I am, Eleanor said, her voice thin. He thinks I escaped. Yes, he does. And that uncertainty is eating at him. Watch his hands. See how he keeps checking his phone. He's desperate for word from you. On the screen, Gareth was indeed fidgeting with his phone, stealing glances at it whenever he thought Julian wasn't looking. Julian, Gareth began carefully, I know this is difficult, but have you thought about the business? The Henderson contracts still need attention, and there are some financial decisions that can't wait. I trust you to handle it, Julian said, his gaze fixed distantly. You've been such a good friend, Gareth. I don't know what I'd do without you. Gareth's smile was warm and genuine, or at least it would have seemed genuine to anyone who didn't possess Julian's knowledge. We'll get through this together. Eleanor wouldn't want you to give up on everything you've built. You're right, Julian agreed. She'd want me to fight, to keep building the empire we started together. That afternoon, Julian's next calculated move began. Arthur Finch, the accountant who had been helping Gareth embezzle funds, received an unexpected visit from federal agents investigating financial irregularities at several Seattle businesses. Mr. Finch, Agent Evelyn Reed said, sitting across from Arthur in his office, her demeanor cool and professional. We've received information suggesting that several business accounts have been manipulated over the past 6 months. Arthur's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because our forensic accountants have found a very interesting trail of transactions. Money moving between accounts, cryptocurrency purchases, offshore transfers, all traced back to companies you manage. Agent Reed slid a thick folder across the desk. That's just the beginning. We've also found evidence suggesting you've been working with others to systematically drain assets from Thorn Enterprises. This is impossible, Arthur stammered. I would never. The evidence says otherwise. Now, you can cooperate with our investigation and help us understand who else is involved, or you can become the fall guy for the entire operation. Your choice. What Arthur Finch didn't know was that Evelyn Reed wasn't a federal agent at all. She was another of Julian's hired actors, and the evidence was carefully constructed to look authentic while actually proving nothing illegal on Julian's part. But the psychological pressure was working. Within an hour, Arthur was ready to confess everything, implicating Gareth Vance as the mastermind behind the embezzlement scheme. In her prison, Eleanor watched the security footage of Arthur's breakdown with growing horror. You're framing them, she cried through the intercom. I'm unveiling their true selves, Julian corrected. Arthur was stealing from me. Gareth was planning to steal millions. I'm simply accelerating the timeline. They'll figure out those aren't real federal agents. Will they? By the time anyone thinks to verify Agent Reed's credentials, Arthur will have already confessed to multiple felonies. And Gareth? Gareth will be so busy trying to cover his tracks that he won't notice the trap closing around him. That evening, Gareth received a panic call from Arthur. They know everything. The feds. They have evidence about the accounts, about the money transfers. I think someone tipped them off. Gareth's blood ran cold. What did you tell them? Nothing yet, but they're coming back tomorrow with a warrant. Gareth, if they trace this back to you. Calm down, Gareth said, though he was anything but calm himself. Let me think. But thinking was exactly what Julian wanted Gareth to do. Every moment Gareth spent worrying about the investigation was a moment he wasn't trying to contact Eleanor or wondering why their perfect plan had gone silent. On her monitor, Eleanor watched Gareth pace his apartment like a caged animal, making frantic phone calls to lawyers and checking his escape routes. He's abandoning you, Julian observed, his voice a cruel whisper. The moment he thinks he might get caught, thoughts of rescuing you disappear entirely. That's the man you threw away 16 years of marriage for. Stop it. Look at him, Eleanor. Really look. He's not trying to find you. He's not worried about your safety. He's only concerned about saving himself. As if to prove Julian's point, Garrett's next call was to Silas Croft, but not to ask about Eleanor's whereabouts. Instead, he was demanding a new identity for himself, wanting to disappear immediately. My wife is dead, Eleanor whispered, watching the man she'd risked everything for abandon her without a second thought. No, Julian said softly. Eleanor Thorne is dead. But you're something new now. The question is, what do you want that something to be? The trap was working perfectly. Gareth was panicking, making mistakes, burning bridges in his desperate attempt to escape. And soon, Julian would spring the final phase of his revenge, the one that would destroy not just Gareth's life, but everything he'd ever hoped to build on the ruins of Julian's marriage. Chapter 7. The Truth Revealed. One agonizing week after Eleanor's supposed death, Gareth Vance made his fatal mistake. Desperate to escape what he believed was a federal investigation, he accessed the hidden accounts containing the money he'd stolen from Thorn Enterprises, unaware that Julian was monitoring every digital move he made. The moment Gareth began transferring funds to his escape account in the Cayman Islands, Julian struck. In her underground room, Eleanor watched the security monitors as a swarm of police cars surrounded Gareth's apartment building. But these weren't Julian's hired actors. These were real Seattle Police Department officers, armed with genuine warrants. "Ow," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Gareth just moved $2.3 million in stolen funds across international borders. Julian's voice explained through the intercom. "That's federal wire fraud, money laundering, and theft. I simply provided the evidence to the appropriate authorities." On the screen, Detective Miller, the same officer who'd responded to Eleanor's accident, led the team that battered down Gareth's door. "Gareth Vance, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft," Miller announced as Gareth was handcuffed in his pajamas. "This is insane," Gareth shouted, disbelief contorting his face. "I haven't done anything wrong." But the evidence was overwhelming. Julian had meticulously documented every illegal transaction, every stolen dollar, every false document. Gareth's own insatiable greed had provided the rope for his hanging. "The beautiful part," Julian continued, "is that in trying to escape with his stolen money, Gareth proved he's guilty of everything I'm accusing him of. No jury in the world will believe his claims of innocence." As Gareth was dragged away in handcuffs, Eleanor noticed something that made her blood freeze. Standing in the crowd of onlookers was Liam Thorne, Julian's brother, who was supposed to be providing family support during this difficult time. But Liam wasn't watching Gareth's arrest with surprise or concern. He was watching with a grim satisfaction, taking photos with his phone. Liam was part of this from the beginning. Eleanor realized, a new layer of betrayal opening up. "Liam's been my eyes and ears for months," Julian confirmed. "Every piece of evidence against Gareth, every detail about your affair. Liam gathered it all. Family loyalty, Eleanor. Something you never understood." The next visitor to arrive at their house was Sophia, Julian's 14-year-old daughter, returning from her extended stay at the Davies family home. Eleanor watched through the monitors as her daughter hugged Julian, both of them crying. Sophia from raw grief, Julian for what appeared to be profound relief at having his daughter safely home. "Dad, I still can't believe Mom's really gone," Sophia said, her voice breaking. Julian held her tightly. "I know, sweetheart, but we'll get through this together. Your mother loved you more than anything in the world." Watching the scene, Eleanor finally broke down completely. Her daughter was in agony, believing her mother was dead, while Julian comforted her with insidious lies. The cruelty of it was staggering. "Let me see her," Eleanor pleaded through the intercom. "Please, Julian, let me see Sophia." "Sophia is mourning her mother," Julian replied coldly. "Eleanor Thorne is dead. Remember, you made that choice when you decided to fake your death and abandon her." "I wasn't abandoning her. The plan was to bring her with me once everything settled down. The plan was to steal $50 million and disappear, leaving me and Sophia to deal with the aftermath. Don't rewrite history now that you're caught." Over the following days, Eleanor was forced to watch as her carefully constructed life continued without her. Sophia returned to school, where she was treated with sympathy and kindness by everyone who knew her mother had died. Julian played the devoted single father, taking time off work to care for his grieving daughter. Meanwhile, Gareth's arrest had made headlines. "Local tycoon arrested in massive embezzlement scheme," read the Seattle Times. The article detailed how Gareth Vance had allegedly stolen millions from Thorn Industries over several months, using his partnership position to access company accounts. What the article didn't mention, what no one except Julian knew, was that much of this stolen money had actually been moved by Julian himself, creating a meticulously crafted paper trail that led directly to Garrett's accounts. "You framed him," Eleanor said during one of their daily conversations. "I exposed him," Julian corrected. "Gareth was stealing from me. Maybe not millions, but he was embezzling. The cryptocurrency accounts were real. The offshore transfers were real. I simply enhanced the evidence." "Enhanced?" "You manufactured evidence. I documented his crimes. The fact that I moved some of my own money to make the case stronger doesn't change the fact that Gareth is a thief and a traitor." "What about Arthur?" "Arthur's cooperating fully with authorities. He's provided detailed testimony about Gareth's embezzlement scheme in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years in minimum security instead of 20 in federal prison. He's quite grateful." Eleanor realized with growing horror that Julian had orchestrated everything with surgical precision. Gareth would go to prison for decades. Arthur would serve a manageable sentence for his cooperation, and Julian would emerge as the victim, the betrayed friend who'd lost both his wife and his business partner to their treacherous scheme. "And what about me?" she asked, her voice hollow. "What's my role in this masterpiece?" "You, my dear, are the tragic victim whose death exposed their crimes. If you hadn't died in that car accident, Gareth might have stolen everything I owned. Your death saved the company, protected Sophia's inheritance, and revealed the truth about the people I trusted. I'm not dead. Eleanor Thorne is dead. Her body was buried yesterday in a beautiful ceremony. Sophia threw a rose on the casket, and I gave a eulogy about how much I love my wife despite her flaws." Eleanor stared at the monitor in shock. She'd missed her own funeral, watching instead as Julian and Sophia stood over an empty casket while friends and family paid their respects to a woman who was sitting in a basement vault 20 meters away. "You're completely insane," she whispered. "I'm completely thorough," Julian replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "And now we come to the final act. Gareth will spend the next 30 years in prison. Arthur will serve his 5 years and disappear into witness protection. Sophia will inherit everything and never know her mother was a criminal. And you? What about me? You get to choose. I can make Eleanor Thorne's death permanent, a tragic accident that ended a beautiful marriage. Or you can live, but as someone else entirely. New identity, new life, new everything. But if you choose to live, you do so knowing that returning to your old life means destroying Sophia's future and revealing that her beloved mother was a thief who faked her own death." The weight of the choice crushed down on Eleanor like a physical force. She could expose Julian's elaborate revenge and return to her daughter, but only by shattering Sophia's image of her mother and potentially implicating herself in Gareth's crimes. Or she could disappear forever, letting Sophia believe her mother died loving her, preserving her daughter's inheritance and innocence. "Choose carefully," Julian said, "because this is the only choice you'll get." Chapter 8. The Final Confrontation. 2 weeks after her supposed death, Eleanor Thorne made her decision. She requested a face-to-face meeting with Julian, the first time they would be in the same room since her imprisonment began. Julian entered her underground room, carrying a single chair, which he placed carefully across from where she sat on the bed. He looked different, leaner, harder, as if the past month had stripped away any lingering softness he'd once possessed. "You look terrible," he observed clinically. 2 weeks in a basement prison will do that," Eleanor replied, her voice hoarse. Despite everything, she couldn't help but notice that Julian looked better than he had in years. Revenge, it seemed, agreed with him. "Have you decided? I want to know something first. Why this elaborate scheme? Why not just divorce me, prosecute Gareth, and move on with your life?" Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her as if she were a complex business problem to be solved. "Because divorce would have given you half of everything I built. Because prosecuting Gareth would have made him a martyr to your affair. Because moving on would have meant accepting that you won. So, this is about winning. This is about justice. You and Gareth thought you could destroy my life and walk away rich. Instead, Gareth is in federal prison. Arthur is in witness protection. And you're sitting in a basement room, choosing between death and exile. What about Sophia? Don't you care what this is doing to her?" For the first time, something flickered in Julian's eyes. Not regret, but a carefully controlled pain. Sophia is better off believing her mother died than knowing her mother was a criminal. She'll inherit everything now, be raised by a father who actually loves her, and never have to learn that the woman who gave birth to her was willing to abandon her for money. I wasn't abandoning her. The plan was to steal $50 million and disappear to a non-extradition country. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming you were going to send for Sophia later. Eleanor fell silent because, in her heart, she knew he was right. The plan had always been about escaping with Gareth, and Sophia had been an afterthought, to be dealt with later. I've made my decision, she said finally. And I choose exile, but I have conditions. Julian raised an eyebrow. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. You want me gone permanently. I can give you that, but I want regular updates on Sophia. Photos, school reports, confirmation that she's happy and healthy. I want to know my daughter is thriving, even if I can't be part of her life. Agreed. Anything else? I want to know that she'll never learn the truth about me. Promise me that whatever story you tell her about why I died, it's something she can live with. Something that won't destroy her memory of me. Julian nodded slowly. She believes you died instantly in the accident, that you didn't suffer. She believes you loved her more than anything in the world, and that your last words were about how proud you were of her. Tears started flowing down Eleanor's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Your new identity comes with strict rules. You'll live in a small town in Montana under the name Brenna Hale. You'll work as a bookkeeper for a family-owned business. You'll have a modest apartment and a used car. You'll never contact anyone from your old life. Never try to research Sophia or me. Never attempt to return to Seattle. And if I break these rules, then evidence will surface proving that Eleanor Thorne wasn't killed in an accident. She faked her death as part of Gareth Vance's embezzlement scheme. Sophia will learn that her mother was a criminal who abandoned her. The insurance money will be recovered. Sophia's inheritance will be frozen pending legal proceedings, and you'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. The brutal elegance of the trap was perfect. Julian had ensured that any attempt by Eleanor to reclaim her old life would utterly destroy the daughter she was trying to protect. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I always do. 3 days later, Eleanor found herself in the passenger seat of Liam Thorne's pickup truck, driving through the vast Montana countryside toward her new life. Liam had been silent for most of the journey, but as they neared their destination, he finally spoke. You know he still loves you, Liam said quietly. Funny way of showing it. Julian doesn't forgive. Never has. Not since our father left. But he also doesn't hate without cause. What you did to him. What you did to Sophia. It broke something in him that can't be fixed. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Liam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Mistakes are forgetting anniversaries or leaving the milk out. What you did was calculated betrayal over months. There's a difference. They drove in silence until they reached Brenna Hale's new home. A small apartment above a quaint bookstore in a town so remote it barely appeared on maps. This is it, Liam said, handing her a set of keys and an unmarked envelope. Your new identity, social security card, driver's license, and enough money to get started. There's a job waiting for you at the hardware store. They think you're a widow from California looking for a fresh start. Will I ever see you again? No. As far as the world is concerned, Liam Thorne helped bury his sister-in-law 2 weeks ago. Brenna Hale has no connection to anyone named Thorne. As Liam drove away, leaving her standing on a dusty street in the middle of nowhere, Eleanor realized that Julian's revenge was complete. She was alive, but Eleanor Thorne was truly dead, buried in a cemetery in Seattle, while her daughter mourned and her husband moved on with his life. But she was alive, and that was more than Gareth could say from his federal prison cell. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. 6 months later, Julian Thorne stood in his Seattle office, looking out at a city that no longer held any painful memories. Gareth Vance had been sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Arthur Finch had completed his cooperation agreement and disappeared into witness protection. The insurance company had paid out Eleanor's life insurance policy without question. Thorne Enterprises was more profitable than ever, having absorbed Gareth's partnership share and eliminated the systematic theft that had been bleeding money for months. Julian's net worth had actually increased since his wife's death. Sophia was thriving. At 15, she blossomed into a confident, intelligent young woman who spoke about her mother with love, but without the crushing grief that had characterized the first few months. She was getting straight A's, had been accepted into a summer program for gifted students, and seemed genuinely happy. "Dad, are you ready for dinner?" Sophia asked, poking her head into his office. "Almost finished here," Julian replied, closing the file he'd been reviewing. "Good. I'm making that pasta dish Mom taught me before." She paused, the automatic reference to her mother still sometimes causing a flicker of sadness. "She'd be immensely proud of how well you cook it," Julian said gently, the lie of practice comfort. Sophia smiled. "I think so too." As they walked to the kitchen together, Julian reflected on how completely his life had been reconstructed. He'd eliminated every trace of betrayal, protected his daughter's future, and ensured that those who tried to destroy him were permanently neutralized. In Montana, Brenna Hale finished her shift at Rocky Mountain Hardware and walked the 3 blocks to her small apartment. She'd lost 20 pounds. Her hair was shorter and darker now, and she dressed in simple, practical clothes that would have horrified the fashion-conscious Eleanor Thorne. But she was surviving. The work was honest. The town was quiet. And every month, she received an unmarked envelope containing photos of Sophia, at school, at home, with friends. Watching her daughter grow up through carefully cropped photographs that revealed nothing about Julian's life. Sophia looked happy. That was all that mattered. Brenna had tried once to research news about Seattle online. Within hours, her internet service had been cut off, and a man in a quiet suit had appeared at her door with a chilling reminder about the terms of her agreement. She never tried again. Some evenings, she would sit on her apartment's small balcony and wonder if she could have made different choices, if she could have been satisfied with the life she'd had instead of risking everything for something more exciting. But those thoughts led nowhere productive. Eleanor Thorne had made her choices, and Brenna Hale lived with the consequences. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Julian had begun dating again, carefully, selectively, with women who understood that his daughter came first and that he wasn't interested in anything casual. He'd learned to trust his instincts about people, to spot the warning signs he'd missed with Eleanor. "You know," Liam said during one of their monthly dinners, "you could have just divorced her. It would have been simpler." "Simpler isn't always better," Julian replied. "This way, Sophia keeps her inheritance, her innocence, and her memories. Gareth and Arthur face actual consequences for their crimes, and I never have to worry about any of them returning to hurt my family again. And you're okay with the fact that she's still alive out there?" Julian considered this. "She's not alive. Eleanor Thorne is dead. There's a woman in Montana who looks like her. But Eleanor Thorne died in that car accident, just like everyone believes. That's a very clinical way of looking at it. I'm a clinical person. It served me well." As the months turned into years, the story of Julian Thorne's tragic loss became just another piece of Seattle business folklore. The successful entrepreneur who'd lost his wife in a car accident discovered his business partner's betrayal, but emerged stronger than ever while raising his daughter alone. Sophia graduated high school as valedictorian and was accepted to Stanford with a full scholarship. She decided to study business, wanting to eventually join her father's company. "I want to build on what you and Mom started," she told Julian during her graduation party. "She'd be incredibly proud," Julian said, and meant it. In Montana, Brenna Hale read about Sophia's graduation in the newspaper clipping that arrived with her monthly photos. She cried for hours. Tears of pride, grief, and acceptance all mixed together. Her daughter was successful, happy, and loved. That had to be enough. Julian's revenge was complete, not because he destroyed his enemies, but because he'd built something better from the wreckage they'd tried to create. Sophia would inherit an empire, never knowing her mother had tried to steal it. Gareth would spend his best years in prison, never knowing the woman he'd loved was still alive. And Eleanor, as Brenna, would spend her life watching from a distance as the family she'd abandoned thrived without her. It was, Julian reflected, perfect justice. Not mercy, not forgiveness, but perfect, inescapable justice. And for a man who'd learned at 12 years old that the world was cruel and unforgiving, perfect justice was the only victory that mattered. 5 years after Eleanor Thorne's death, Julian stood at his daughter's college graduation, watching Sophia accept her business degree with honors. She was beautiful, brilliant, and completely innocent of the darkness that had once threatened to destroy their family. In the audience, he noticed a woman with short, dark hair watching from the back row, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. For just a moment, their eyes met across the crowded auditorium. Brenna Hale had broken the rules one last time, traveling across the country to see her daughter graduate. It was a risk that could destroy everything, but she had to see Sophia's triumph with her own eyes. Julian could have had her arrested, could have exposed everything and shattered Sophia's image of her mother forever. Instead, he simply nodded once, an acknowledgement that this moment belonged to both of them, regardless of everything that had come between them. Then Sophia was walking across the stage, accepting her diploma, and the moment passed. When Julian looked back, the woman in the baseball cap was gone. Later that evening, as Sophia celebrated with her friends, Julian received a single text message from an unknown number. "Thank you." He deleted it immediately and never heard from Brenna Hale again. Julian Thorne had won completely, but he'd also learned that even perfect revenge could contain moments of imperfect mercy. It was perhaps the only lesson Eleanor had left to teach him. The war was over. The victory was total. And somewhere in Montana, a woman who had once been his wife was learning to live with the consequences of betraying the one man who never forgave and never forgot. But their daughter would never know any of this. Sophia Thorne would inherit everything, believing her parents had loved each other and that her mother had died believing in her daughter's potential. In the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered.